Some conversations carry a weight before a single word is spoken. You can feel them lingering quietly beneath the surface, asking something of you before you even understand why. There are parts of the human experience so profound that language almost fails in the presence of them. Places within grief, love, and survival that exist beyond explanation. The kinds of experience that changes not only a person, but the shape of the world around them. And yet, within those deepest fractures, there are people who somehow continue. People who learn how to carry the unbearable without it completely consuming them, not untouched, not unchanged, but still here, still standing. This conversation exists inside that space, inside the tension between devastation and endurance, between the moments that bring us to our knees and the quiet, almost imperceivable strength that allows us to rise again. Because sometimes resilience doesn't roar, sometimes it simply whispers, "I'm still here." Welcome to What Would They Say? We would like to acknowledge that we are recording today on the lands of the Wanneroo Nation. We pay our deepest respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today. In an episode that speaks so deeply to love, loss, endurance, and the carrying of memory, we also acknowledge the strength of First Nations peoples who have carried grief, story, connection, and survival across generations, while remaining deeply connected to country, culture, and community.
Everybody should live like they're dying. What do you mean it's a tumour? What do you mean it's a tumour in her spine? In the blink of an eye, my world, our world, completely shattered. He was just gone. He just didn't come home. I wasn't there.
Today's guest has lived through what many of us fear most, the loss of a child. But for her, it happened not once, but 3 times. 3 different children, 3 different tragedies, the unimaginable, over and over again. And yet somewhere in the middle of that grief, she said something to me that I have never forgotten. I bend, I don't break. Today you will meet my beautiful friend Racheal. You'll hear her story, not just about loss, but about what happens when life pushes you to the absolute edge of what feels survivable, about how grief reshapes you, about love, endurance, and finding a way to keep breathing when your world has shattered. This conversation is raw and it is confronting, but within Racheal's lived experience is a wisdom that reaches far beyond grief itself, because at some point, all of us will face moments that bend us. And in hearing her story, maybe we learn something about how we survive them. I just want to give a trigger warning before we start our conversation today. If you are feeling particularly fragile or you think that some of these themes might touch parts of you that you don't feel like you might be able to explore today, I suggest you pop this one aside, maybe come back to it later, maybe not at all. But I just want you to be aware that this conversation is going to be raw, honest, and filled with emotion. This is a post note that I'm asking Megan to pop into this episode after we've recorded it. Racheal and I, as you will hear during this conversation, are animated characters. We're talking about stuff that's not easy to talk about. We're drinking wine, we're moving our hands, we're talking like we're in a conversation with each other, which we do all the time. So you are going to hear a little bit of banging around as, we touch the table or pick up our wine glasses. And I'm not going to tell the grieving lady sitting across me to stop moving her arms around while she's explaining the hardest parts of her life. So this is my apology to you guys, as well as to Megan, for the little bits of background noise you're going to pick up along the way. Sorry, Megan. Racheal, thank you for coming to the podcast.
You're welcome, Shannon.
Now, this could go one of many ways.
Often does.
We have a track record of sitting down at a table and starting to talk, and 4 or 5 hours later we realised that there was things we were supposed to do. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Most of the listeners are pretty aware that I head down rabbit holes. So
That's why we're not a good combination. My favourite place is down a rabbit hole.
And I think you will probably take us down a few today.
Yeah.
So before we get into the guts of it, the listeners that have listened to a lot of our stories have heard Hannah mentioned before.
My beautiful Hannah.
Yes, she has popped up in a few different conversations with a few different people.
Yeah.
So I think what we might do is let's head back to the beginning.
Yes.
And I would love for you to share your memories and your thoughts about these incredible humans that you gave birth to.
Let's go back even before then, because I have, buried 3 children, but I've also had 11 miscarriages. So I have dealt with the loss of children, or the grief that is associated with the loss of pregnancy and the loss of children, for a very, very long time. So I think it's always very important to recognise that you don't necessarily have to have the body of a child in your hand, or a child in a coffin, or somebody recognising a funeral or something for you to be grieving that loss. I have lost twin pregnancies. I have lost singular pregnancies, some early on, some later on, and then Christian, who was diagnosed with trisomy 13, which is Edwards syndrome, very similar to Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21, and incompatible with life for any length of time. So we knew that we were going to lose Christian, and that even though I'd had miscarriages up until that point and had dealt with that loss, I think he was even more wanted because I actually was going to have a baby. And then we had this baby with Edwards syndrome, and sadly he passed away. My other 2 children at that time, just backtracking a little bit, my eldest daughter and my eldest son were 7 and 2. And so my eldest daughter was a little bit more aware of the fact of what was going on, whereas my son was not. He just knew he was going to have a brother, and then he didn't have a brother anymore. So it was incredibly difficult just navigating that with young children, but also my husband and my loss as well. And I will never, ever forget. I remember thinking to myself the day we carried his tiny little coffin. We didn't really have a funeral. We had a graveside memorial, I think you'd say, with a celebrant, and my sister and my niece had come up, and just our immediate family. And I'll never forget Lance going over to the car and carrying this tiny little white coffin, and just like you would cradle a baby, but because he was.
Yeah.
And then we, having to hand that coffin over to the celebrant, and then we sort of went through the funeral motions. But I remember thinking in my head, I'm never going to see anything sadder in my life than my husband carrying that our son until Hannah, until Hannah's funeral. Yeah. Which leads us to Hannah, because I think in the meantime, grief is so I think about it a lot, and I think about what it means because there's all these, the 5 steps of the denial.
Yeah,
like all of this wanky bullshit out there about grief. And when I think about grief, I think you're born, so you're alive, which means you're going to die, which means you're going to grieve. It is just that simple.
Yeah.
Grief is inherently linked to life and death. So if you're alive, you're going to die and you're going to grieve, every single one of us. And we all do it differently. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is no, all these steps and programs and self-help things, because there are billions of us on the planet and we're all made up differently, or our experiences are different. The way you grieve, the way I've grieved, is probably linked to how my childhood was, what my marriage is like, what my friends are like. Everything is linked. So, of course, we're not all going to grieve the same way, but we are all going to grieve. And it is just a human condition. It's a human experience. It's not an emotion. It's not happiness. It's not sadness. We have empathy. You can understand when someone loses somebody they love, but you'll never really know, because my DNA is forever changed because it happens to you on such a cellular level. So our experience with Christian, whilst heartbreaking, and particularly in that moment and those feelings and those moments that we had with him, forever embedded in us, completely different to losing Hannah.
Yep.
And miscarrying as well, all grieving moments, but completely different.
And I think each time you experience grief, it gives you a different perspective, right? Because every emotion is relative to your previous experiences in life.
Yeah, that's right.
Which speaks to what you just mentioned about our DNA, our childhood, the things that we've gone through in our lives. But there was no way for you to know when you were looking at your husband holding that coffin.
What was to come.
What was to come for you guys.
No. And I don't think anybody is prepared for hearing the words that your child has cancer, or prepare you for moving into the oncology unit at a children's hospital. And the little girl, I'll never forget, our first day there was a 3-month-old baby in the room next to Hannah. She had leukemia. And I just remember thinking, how does a 3-month-old baby have cancer?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, Hannah's 13, she's too young to have cancer. And then we spent, as you know, the better part of 18 months at John Hunter Children's Hospital, meeting the most amazing children, some, many of whom were friends of ours and their families have become friends of ours, some of whom are doing very, very well, and some of whom we've lost.
Yeah. From
the ages of 2, little Cruzy was 2 years old when he passed away, to Connor from Fight for Connor, one of Hannah's very best friends. He was 9. And then Hannah was 15. Another friend of Hannah's was 15, Stephanie, passed away. And then other kids, they're doing so well.
Yeah.
They're doing so well, and I just think there is no rhyme or reason, but nothing will prepare you. Nothing will prepare you.
So let's go back to before Hannah was diagnosed. We talk about what an inspiration Hannah was to so many of us in so many different ways. And there's a really special reason for that, and it is who she was. I'd like people to hear about this girl that we keep mentioning from the person who knew her best.
She was a bit of a firecracker. And I think to understand where Hannah's personality probably really started, why she was a firecracker, is because she was one of 5 children. Obviously, we had 6 children and Christian had since passed away. And then she was the second youngest. So you can imagine being the second youngest, and my younger three were born within 3 years, 3.5 years. So they're quite close, Benny, Hannah and Lucy. And then we had my older two. But you can imagine it's very, very hard to be in a family of big personalities and be a quiet one. And if you want to be heard at the dinner table, you better be able to be heard. And I think, and that doesn't just mean being loud, because I'm loud. So, and everybody about me knows that I am loud.
Yep.
Some of my other kids are a bit like that too. My husband is not. He's very softly spoken. Hannah's way of getting noticed was her sense of humour. She just became so quirky, and that was how she got noticed. And she figured that out at about 2 or 3 years old. Like she was like, okay, I'm going to be the funny one. I'm going to be quirky and you're going to notice me. We did.
Yeah.
Everybody did.
Everywhere she went.
Everybody did. From her sense of dress. She was the only kid in primary school wearing knee-high socks to school.
With Hello Kitty emblems on them.
She didn't care.
She didn't.
She didn't care. Did she get picked on for it? Yep.
Did she give a shit?
Did she care? No.
Nope.
No. And she'd leave the house sometimes and I go, Hen, are you sure? And she'd be like full of confidence, and out the door she'd go. Love that. Yeah.
I remember when Hannah first come into our lives, and it was through her relationship with my daughter, who Elsie had never really found her person at school. Like she had some nice friends, but they all had best friends, and it's part of the small school life.
Yeah.
There's not a big pool to choose from. And Hannah was the year above Elsie, so they kind of knew each other, but they got paired together for a skit night for the school camp.
Yeah.
And
that was it.
it was two square pegs who had neither of them had ever fit into the round holes that life offers. And, well, as they say, it was love at first sight.
It was love at first sight. And there is no rule to say that your first love can't be your best friend when you're in primary school.
And it really
it can
was.
be.
It was.
And if you put it into the context of her life, she was 15 when she passed away. That was her first love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was real and true, and Elsie accepted did they fight?
Absolutely.
And as you do with your first love, but did they always come back together? Yes, because the one thing that they both were really, really good at, sometimes with a little bit of prompting from you and I, but was to acknowledge what the other person is feeling. And you don't always have to forgive doesn't mean you have to agree.
No.
They didn't always agree, and they would just go, well, we're just going to move on now and they did. They did a good job of it. They did a great job of that.
They were mature beyond their years in some of that emotional intelligence stuff. And when we get into once Hannah went into hospital, their emotional maturity was just astounding. But
agreed.
They were also incredibly immature.
One of my favourite photos of Elsie and Hannah is the makeup.
Yeah.
Where they have literally, and both of them, like Hannah wanted to become a makeup artist, and she was she got so good at her makeup, I couldn't believe it. And Elsie did do makeup or does do makeup, did do paid for money for a living. And I looked at this photo, and it's still one of my all-time favourites because it is just pure joy. And they have literally just...
It was blindfolded. They did it in the front yard.
They looked like 70-year-old senile women had done their makeup in a really bad nursing home. and the staff are just going to let them sit there like that because they look beautiful. That's what they remind me of.
With themselves.
They just thought they looked so great. Bright red cheeks, big, everything just looks so bad. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it is. Those memories are my fondest.
Just before Hen was diagnosed, she'd just found so many things that she loved too. She'd started dance, and she was looking at doing singing lessons and all of these places. Camping.
Oh, the first time she'd ever been camping
living
with
like
you.
a homeless person.
Oh, no.
These
All the
things-
wonderful things that you're meant to be discovering when you're 13 years old.
Exactly right.
Living life.
And
all
then
the things.
her
in the
life
blink
got
of an eye.
turned upside down.
In the blink of an eye. Yeah. From a sore back to Ewing's sarcoma.
Well, she thought she'd pulled a muscle at dance.
We all thought she'd pulled a muscle. The doctors thought she'd pulled a muscle. The physio thought she'd pulled a muscle. You know, it was the running joke that we had for so long was because she was losing feeling in her leg. And she'd said to me, you know, because we'd seen the GP, we'd seen the physio, and she's like, oh, it's really odd, Mum, because I don't have feeling in my leg. And she would say, I think it's a tumour. And I said, it's not a tumour. You know, and it was.
Yeah.
And it just was unbelievable. What do you mean it's a tumour? What do you mean it's a tumour in her spine? What do you mean you don't know what kind of tumour it is when we find, you know, what all these questions. And it was probably 6 weeks from being in hospital in the oncology. I mean, they knew she had cancer. What kind of cancer? We did not know. And it was probably 6 weeks later. And at that point, Dr. Frank Alvaro, who was the leading oncologist at John Hunter Children's Hospital, is also part of an organisation that's like the Worldwide Children's Oncology Organisation. And so the biopsy was sort of sent via, you know, Zoom, you know, other doctors were looking at it, and a doctor in Germany said it's Ewing's sarcoma. That's how rare it is.
Mm. None of us knew what it was.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And I remember Hannah saying to him, because she was real frank, you know, she would ask the questions. And I think that in itself is why Hannah dealt with this whole situation with such grace, because there wasn't anything unknown, really. She asked every question. I think Frank, she probably floored him right at the very beginning, because she was just like, well, what are the odds? They don't like giving you odds.
No.
They don't like giving you numbers because everybody's different. You don't know treatment response. This is a rare sarcoma as well. But she's like, you just need to tell me, am I going to live or die? And he said, not today. And I remember when he said not today, my heart just sank, because as an adult, I know that's his way of not saying,
yeah,
you're going to die. We will do our best, but, you know, and they, you know, there's the treatments and you go through all the things, and that in itself was a lot, but you don't know. You just don't know. And I remember 12 months, 13 months in, we had a PET scan, many scans, but we had a PET scan and she was all clear. There was no sign of cancer at all. And we're like, you know, and I remember Hannah and I just thinking, oh, my God, this is amazing. After all of this, it's all been worth it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a life. And 6 weeks later, we bought her concert tickets to Green Day for her end of chemo, a gift.
Yep.
And the day before the concert, she fell in the bathroom, lost feeling in her leg. And I rang Frank and he said, you need to bring her straight in. I said, the hell I will. She's got concert tickets to Green Day. He goes, what do you mean? And I go, no, she's got concert tickets, because I knew what that meant.
Yes.
And if we went, that she wasn't getting out. So she went to Green Day with her friends, and I said to them, and you hold her, like, do not let her walk on her own, you hold her up. And the very next, he goes, okay, will you bring her back the next day? And I took her back the next day and we did a scan, or they sent us over to the Mater for a PET scan, and she lit up like a Christmas tree. 6 weeks after she had and it was a brand new aggressive Ewing's sarcoma in her spine. It was also in her stomach. It was in her lungs. It was in her brain. And she had neurosurgery that week, and spinal surgery. They removed what they could, and I'll never forget the neurologist. Neurosurgeons are quite tough cookies.
Yep.
They're not emotional. We learnt that early on. They sort of just give you things straight. This guy came in and he sat on the end of her bed, and he wept and he apologised, and he just said, I couldn't get it. I could not get it all. And that's when we realised. And then Frank came in and sat on the bed, and then you have the social workers, you know.
She used to have the thing about if they brought the chair
If they
in.
brought a chair.
She used to say,
Oh.
if they bring a chair in to sit down, I know it's
We're
bad
screwed.
news. Yeah.
Yeah, if they bring a chair. Or if they bring a nurse with them. You know, you've got to have – if they bring support.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just look at each other going, oh, what's this? But, yeah, and then the words that you just never, ever want to hear. And she said, well, what kind of medicine will I have to take now? And he said to her, we can put you on sort of a different kind of protocol for 12 months, which will mean you're in hospital having another chemotherapy protocol for 12 months. It will buy you time. And Hannah goes, but that time I'm going to be in hospital and really sick, because you'll remember we nearly lost Hannah several times due to the treatment alone. It's a gruelling situation.
It was like they would take her as close to death
as
as
possible.
humanly possible and then let her rebuild herself and then do it all over again.
And if you understand chemotherapy, it is to kill every cell. I mean, the thought process is it's to kill the cancerous cells. But in that process, it's killing all of the cells.
Yeah.
So then you're on other medication to build up your cells. And so you are literally dying the entire treatment time.
Yeah.
And in some people it works and in some cases it doesn't. And so she had just said, she just looked at me and said, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be in hospital. And we literally, that conversation happened at about 3:00 in an afternoon, and we were out of that hospital by 5.
Yeah.
I remember nurses coming up to Hannah and I saying they were so proud of us and what a brave decision to make, because not many people do, especially when it comes to a child, because your first instinct is to protect your children.
Yep.
And you want them to be well, because I'll never forget when I had to sign DNR paperwork. So she came home, went into palliative care at home, and we had these conversations with then the palliative care doctor. What happens now? And so things like do not resuscitate paperwork, or do, depending on what you want. Hannah wanted to die at home. She did not want to go back to hospital ever again. And the rules in this country are if you ring an ambulance and they come to your house, particularly for a minor, if you do not have that paperwork, they have to take them to a hospital. And the chances are when you're palliative, you're probably not going to come out. So you're going to die in the hospital. So she was like, Mum, you better sign that paperwork. And Lance could not.
No.
He could not. And I
remember humans, Racheal.
Most
humans would.
It was really, really tough.
Yeah.
And I remember reading, it's not just a little bit, it was quite the paper. And I remember reading it thinking, oh my God, this is a lot. But it was the best decision we ever made, because those months following, and it was only months following from that terminal diagnosis to her passing away in the August, were the best months. They were the best months, and it reminds me that living, it doesn't matter how long you're here for. Everybody should live like they're dying.
Yeah.
Seriously, we all should. Every day is a gift. We're all dying. I remember saying, Hannah said to me, Mum, I'm dying one day. And I said, we're all dying, hun. The only difference is you are so blessed to know. You are so blessed to know, because now you get to make – I said we all should live our lives with the understanding that we're dying, and we should make great choices and great decisions every day, but we don't, because you get bogged down in the day-to-day of life and the things you think that are important, and they're so not. But when you are 15 and you literally have months to live, she was just like, let's do this. And we did. I remember we were talking about the school formal, and at that point it was planned for September or something. And I remember Frank saying to me, you need to bring that forward. And even then that made me go, okay. So I rang the teacher that was involved, and I'm like, righto, this is what we've got to do. We need to bring this formal forward because there was no way she was missing her Year 10 formal, and we brought it forward, and it happened in the July, and even then in those few months leading up to the July, I did not think we were going to get there, and then she would just pull it out of the air and look as glamorous as she did on the day and have the time of her life, you know.
Yes.
That was the beginning of public Hannah.
That was the beginning of
I
public
think,
Hannah.
yeah.
Well, yes. Let's talk about Trent, who changed the game for this. So Trent Hodgkinson
yes,
was a Knights player at the time, and he
such a beautiful man,
such an amazing
So Hannah
man.
had met him during. So there was a campaign called Kick for Kids. It probably still runs, but the premise of it was that the Knights players would have a kicking tee and they'd put the child's name on it. They'd be nominated from the social worker at the hospital, and you'd go to the game and, you know, their name's on it, and then you go downstairs, meet all the players, and you get some cool gifts, and, you know, that's what started Hannah's relationship with Trent. And they just kind of hit it off. They just were buddies then. They were just mates then. And it culminated in Trent asking Hannah if she would go to the formal with him. And what a date. What a date. For Lance and I, if it was like, because she was only 15, so we hadn't gotten to the point with her where we got a boy coming to the door with flowers and a first date, or the nervousness of her going off in a car with somebody for the first time, or an engagement or a wedding. We didn't get any of that. The day of her formal, just seeing her get ready and the dress, and then Trent coming and the flowers and the photos and the arriving to everything that we wrote. Honestly,
there wasn't like every news station. There was photographers
it was
everywhere.
Incredible.
There was
her face lit up like the sun.
Yeah.
I've never seen her look brighter. She was frail that day. She was very, very frail that day. And if you look real closely at some of those pictures, you can see Trent holding her up.
Yeah.
And I said to her, because she had these heels that she picked that were like 6-inch high heels. I'm like, Han, you're going to break a leg. This is going to be bad. And she was like, I'm wearing those heels. And I'm like, well, you look stunning. And I said to Trent, can you just, the heels, they're a bit of a worry. Not a problem. He looked after her. He literally was a knight in shining armour.
He was, and she was the belle of the ball.
And it was amazing. And Lance and I got to see all of those missed moments that we knew were going to be missed in those moments. It was one moment, but it encompassed so much that we got just a quick flash of what the future could have looked like, and it was amazing. What a gift.
It is.
What a gift.
It is an incredible gift, but it's also a sobering reality at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that, again, is perspective, I think, because I have never looked at losing Hannah. I still don't feel like I've lost her, and that's actually one of my pet peeves, that phrase, because I know where she is. She's not lost.
Yeah.
That used to annoy me. I'm really sorry you lost your daughter. Well, I didn't lose her. She's not lost. I know where she is. But it is perspective, and it is. I think when you spend almost 2 years preparing yourselves as a family and also preparing a child. She was 13 when she was diagnosed, 15 when she died. Preparing her for death. It is perspective in how you look at it. And I looked at every one of those moments, like when we were planning for her funeral and picking the music and making place cards and all of the, just planning all these things. What a gift.
She put the same effort into planning her funeral as most girls do into planning their wedding.
And that's what it was for her.
Yeah.
It was her moment to... there were seating plans, there was music, there was tambourines, there was, you know what I mean? But it was like just she took control of what she could control.
Yeah.
And some people would have thought that was slightly weird, but it wasn't.
No.
It was not weird at all. And it was so beautiful. And it's not lost on me the importance of if you have the opportunity to help someone or facilitate someone in that process, to look at it as a gift, because I can guarantee you I have more moments of looking back on that time with so much joy and love in my heart than I do sadness. And that is the truth. That is the truth.
And the saddest part about that is that you were then given the opportunity to see the comparison.
Yes. And that was the complete flip side to that. So Benny, who was 20 years old and the absolute apple of my eye. You know, we say we don't have favourites when we talk about about your kids, but all of my children will tell you that Benny was my favourite.
Yeah, he might have been mine too.
And I think favourite is the wrong word, but he just was such a beautiful soul. And we called him Benjamin Button because he was like an 80-year-old man in a tiny little boy's body when he was little. He would hold the door open for ladies at the post office. He would walk with his hand in the small of my back. He just had an old man persona. He was so, so sweet and had his whole life ahead of him. And at 20 years old, he got in his car to go to work and was killed in a single vehicle car accident less than 3 kilometres from our front door. And that absolutely took my breath away. And I think the one thing that I learned about that moment when I wanted to die and I just did not want to breathe, and when I say it took my breath away, it took my breath away. I had no will to take another breath. Life is funny because it will make you.
Yeah.
It will make you. Unless you're dying, it is going to make you take another breath. And it did. And those breaths may have been short and staggered for a really long time, but I still hold my breath. You'll hear it in me. I hold my breath when I talk about Hannah, it's a very different feeling. When I talk about Benny, it still makes me want to hold my breath because it caught me so unaware. There was no preparation. There was no goodbye. There was no anything. He was just gone. He just didn't come home. And that has affected me in a very different way to losing Hannah.
As someone who has observed this from the outside and with my own connection and love for both of Racheal's children, the fanfare around Hannah and the offers of help and the people who want to get involved and the some who jump on board because she's Can we talk about it?
Yeah, we can, sure.
Okay, so we had this joke about the cancer train, right? That once Hannah was diagnosed, that there was a few people who, had she fell over in the playground 3 weeks before being diagnosed with cancer, they probably would have walked past and laughed at her or kicked up while she was there. And then these people are on the cancer train and they're flying the flag.
We'd hear her in the bedroom and she'd just go, toot, toot. And I go, what? Because she'd be on her phone and she'd go, all aboard the cancer train. Because that's how she was.
But there was
But yeah, and that was the difference. And I think, Hannah referred to her funeral as the event. Remember? And we'd be planning. We had a notebook,
and it was,
an event. It actually was,
yeah.
and we had a notebook, and it said the event, and in it was the music and all the rest of it. And I remember one of the funniest things with Hannah. Backtracking to Hannah, and we'll move forward again to Ben. But it's hard to talk about one without the other. Yeah. She picked one of the songs that she wanted for – now, bearing in mind she was still alive when we're writing this book. We didn't know when she was going to pass away, was Wake Me Up When September Ends. And she said, I want this song played. This is the song when you walk down into like the chapel area and my coffin's there, and that's the song I want playing. And I said to Han, well, what if your funeral's not in September? Like, that's a little bit weird. Like, and her funeral was on the 1st of September. It was almost everything fell into this perfect place when it came to her. Even her funeral with, we had an amazing haka for Hannah and some of the boys from the Knights. These are had we not done the kicking tea and met Trent and all these things that fell into place and leading up to the event that had I think at last count there was over 1,700 motorbikes that were in her procession, for want of a better word. When that first started, I remember one of the guys that was organising it was like, someone said we're going to need to change the meeting place to Cameron Park, to the go-kart they offered. Yep. He goes, don't be ridiculous. We're not going to need that. And in the end, we needed police. They had to block off streets. We had all of the bikes at the Cameron Park go-kart area. We had the streets of Newcastle en route to Ryhope were lined with people. It was something. It was an event. It was like she was famous. And I actually rode. So the family car was behind us and Hen was in the hearse, and I didn't want her to be in the hearse by herself. So I actually rode in the hearse with Hen, and I got my hand on her coffin behind me going, it's like you're the queen or something. I go, I know you can see this, but Hannah, oh my God, this is amazing. And I remember thinking, do I wave? Because you're like in this weird moment. And I'm like, don't wave, Racheal. That's ridiculous. Hannah would have.
Absolutely.
Hannah was definitely encouraging me to wave, but I did not. I did not wave. But I remember one of the sweetest little things I saw was a gentleman. We went past a nursing home near the primary school. All the kids at Edgeworth Primary were out, and next to it was a nursing home. I think it's gone now, or they're replacing it. But there was a little old man standing there. He would have been 80 if a day. He was dressed in his best Sunday best. His hat was over his heart, and he had a walking cane, like standing there, and he looked so proud to be standing there to farewell my Hannah. And I'm like, you don't even know her. And look at those moments. And Lance and I got hundreds of letters from I don't even know how they got our address, but hundreds of letters came from all over the country just saying how Hannah had touched them in some way. And she absolutely did. So yes, that whole experience. And her getting to, I think this is the other thing, moving back towards Benny, is Hannah's big thing was that she wanted to die at home in her bedroom, just with Lance and I holding her hand on either side.
Yeah.
Now, I had been in the oncology unit long enough by that stage to know that the likelihood of that happening as beautifully as she had planned it was pretty unrealistic. It very, very rarely happens. And often with cancer, because her brain was affected by that point, you don't know what's going to happen. Hannah passed away in her room about 4 hours after seeing my mum her grandma was the last member of the family to have come. So lots of family had all come from America, from everywhere to see her. My mum was the last person to see her that afternoon. I had taken Mum back to the motel in Curry, and I'd got back to the house at about 9:30. Now, we all knew that that the palliative care team are very good on preparing you to signs to look for, and you sort of slow down a little bit. And so she hadn't really gotten out of bed for a week probably. So we knew things were decline. I could see a change in her eyes. I could see things. Her teeth were loosening. There were lots of things. Was I prepared though, for the moment? No. But was I in a space of such gratitude to have gotten back from the motel? Lance says, you've got to come into the bedroom. There's something not quite right with Hen. I rang the palliative care doctor, talked to her about what was happening. She said, I think she's dying. You can choose to call an ambulance, and they would just be there to verify, not for anything else. Or you can just call them later, up to you. So I'm like, yep, no worries, hung up the phone. And we just sat with her. I lit some candles. We sat in her room, put some music. We held her hands. And she very beautifully and peacefully passed away in her room with Lance on one side and me on the other. Exactly how she envisaged it.
Mm-hmm.
Had she envisaged it? Possibly. But it was exactly how she wanted to go. And she had a little smile on her face when she left. And I was just like, what I would have given to see what she was seeing. She just looked so at peace. And my heart, whilst broken, was just so thankful that she got and we got, because I also know parents who have lost children and it's not been so peaceful. And to live with that, very difficult. Moving to Benny and losing him in a single vehicle car accident, and I wasn't home. It was a long way away.
Let's talk about that morning.
I was a long way away. I was on my way to Melbourne to see my mum, and I was about 6 hours away when I got a phone call from my daughter to say that the police were at the house. And I could hear Lance in the background and I could hear Shannon, and she's like, Mum, you've got to come home. Ben's had an accident. Ben's had a car accident. So I'm just like, okay. You go into, okay, is he okay? What hospital's he at? I'll turn around. Do I just meet you? Like, I just start rambling. Do I just meet you at the hospital? I'll just come to the hospital. Where is he? No, Mum, you don't understand. He's died. Benny died. And I just remember inhaling and not exhaling. Like my head was thumping. I could feel my blood coursing through my body. I just could not. And then when I finally spoke, I just remember saying, I don't understand. No, he didn't. I don't understand. I don't understand. I must have said it a million times. And she ended up putting a police officer on the phone. And it's Constable so-and-so, I'm really sorry to inform you that your son succumbed to his injuries at the scene. And that hearing it from Lacey was one thing. It just threw me into shock. But hearing a police constable say that he succumbed to his injuries at the scene hit me like not that I didn't believe Lisa, I did, of course, but it didn't make sense. I'm just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
It just
I had the same reaction when I got the phone call as well. And I was like,
what do you mean?
No, you're wrong.
Yeah. That's not right.
No, that's not right. That's not what happened.
No.
And I actually got angry at Elsie when she called me. And here we are talking about hearing it ourselves. But like for those girls to have to make those phone calls to their mums.
Yeah, yeah. And Lance couldn't tell me. Lance was shattered.
And I just, remember thinking, you've got it wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. What do you mean?
The messages got mixed up somewhere between.
Yeah.
And my thought then was, not again.
No, yeah. Well, the not again didn't hit me for a while, I must say, oddly. But I think it was just because because there was no preparation.
There was nothing.
You know, it is very, very different to lose somebody out of the blue. And especially, I think, there's lots of ways you lose somebody out of the blue, heart attack in your sleep, all the things. But I think for me, because the accident happened literally around the corner from our house and he hit a tree, all I could, then you start visualising the impact. And Ben was such a sweetheart that he would get a cut on his finger and he'd be like, he's 20 years old and he'd be like, I need a Band-Aid. I'd be like, suck it up, princess. It's just, suck on it, whatever. But I thought the thought of him suffering, hitting a tree, and I wasn't there, and it was dark, and it was, what did he feel? And, all these thoughts come racing through your mind that you'll never, ever get answers to. And the one saving grace to all of that was this beautiful man who stopped, who was travelling behind Ben. Ben was on his way to work, and this lovely man, he actually went past because he saw what he thought was headlights in the tree or off the road, and then went back. And I can never thank him enough, because Ben had not instantly died. He had not been killed instantly. His injuries were fatal, but he was not alone when he died. And again, finding grace in those moments, I will forever be so thankful that he was not alone. And that gives me peace. It gives me peace. Does it lessen the questions that I have? No. Did he, I won't know what was going through his mind. If anything, I'll never know. But I do know he wasn't alone. And I do know that is, for me, brings me so much comfort, because I was not there. I wasn't there. And as a mum, you're meant to be there.
And it took so long for you to get back here.
I did not get back. So that accident happened, well, I think by the time I got the phone call, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, roughly. I think the accident happened at about 5:30. So it was some hours later that I was notified, because, of course, an accident happens, police are called, then there's a fatality. Yep. There's all sorts of things that have to happen before the family are notified. And then Lance was home with Lacey and they were notified. And then that conversation probably, with the police probably happened for 45 minutes before the phone call with me. So it was some time. And then it was around, I think it was like 4 o'clock by the time, because you came down. Because Lacey's saying to me, the police wanted me to stay where I was on the side of the road. And I'm like, I am not staying here. I need to get back to my boy. So I calmed down. I waited, because they said, we're sending somebody to make sure you're okay. Well, no one came, because I was like
in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere, just north of Yass, on the side of a highway. My ping thing wasn't working. They're like, ping your location. I had no service. Yeah. So I waited, and in the end I'm like, no, I'm not sitting here any longer. I said to Lacey, rang me and she said, Shannon's coming to get you. And I'm like, Shannon can't come and get me, because I'm in the middle. No one knows where I am. I'm coming home. I'm fine. Because by that point, I had pulled my big girl pants on, and I'm like, I've just got to get home. I was fine. In shock.
That's what I was worried about, you driving along that highway in shock. And I knew that you wouldn't wait. I was like, at least if I come from one end,
that's what Lacey
we'll
said.
Meet in the middle.
She goes, Shannon's going to come and you go, and then we'll meet. So I think by the time that was all happening, I'd rung Lacey and said, I think I was on the northern end of Sydney, and you were where the dinosaurs
end of the freeway,
end of the freeway, whatever. Yeah. So I thought, okay, we can meet. Hornsby.
Imagine having in that moment for us to have to organise logistics.
Yeah, logistics.
we're gonna talk more about that later, but anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So then we were like, and I'll never, because Jack, your son Jack, was driving, he was driving.
He drove me,
so I could drive you, so that you could drive me home. And I'll never forget in that moment, because we met in the car park of a service station of the Ampol Servo, and just as you do. And I just remember Jack getting out of the car and me thinking, he's lost another friend, because Jack had lost a friend in a car accident previously, and all I could think of was now I've just got to hug this poor boy who's just lost another friend. Because in that moment I'm not in my body. I'm just thinking, and then we just hugged like we always do. I don't think there were even words, because there weren't words. I think the only thing that you said to me was my Benny. My Benny, yeah, that he was gone probably. Oh, yeah. And then we sort of got in the car and we had to drive 2 hours home. And then you're just like, oh, what the fuck? And I think that was the actual feel of that car ride home. It was just, what the fuck?
Yeah. I think we might have said that quite a few times.
I think we did. And it's really interesting for me sitting here right now because you know me well. And, you know, I can talk about Hannah till the cows come home and I'm smiling and I'm just so happy. And then when it comes to Ben, it broke my heart and it breaks my heart because I just was not prepared. I just was not prepared. And I just selfishly, I'd already lost Hannah to cancer and we'd already buried Christian. And, you know, I'm like, I'm a good person. What? Why? I never ever thought anything like this would happen. We'd already been through it. And I thought we'd been through it well. We handled ourselves well. You know, I'd be like, look at this. We're a whole family. We're living in life for Hannah's memory because she doesn't get to live it. So everything we're going to do because she doesn't get to do it. And then bang. And that analogy is not lost on me because bang. In that bang, our world, completely shattered.
I remember calling the other New Zealand Racheal after I'd heard and just saying to her, how do I get her through this again? You don't have to pour the wine quietly. I don't think anyone's going to give a shit if we're drinking wine right now.
It calls for, It
does.
It does call for wine. Yeah.
I could not understand how you could do it again.
No. There wasn't anything anybody could say. There wasn't anything anyone could do. I just remember Benny passing, whereas Hannah passing was loud and lots of people and a celebration of her 15 years of life. It was more like that. I remember feeling I didn't want to celebrate. I didn't want to think about all of the wonderful things. I just didn't want to have – I remember I wanted his funeral to be really, really quickly.
Yep.
And it was a stupid public holiday. It was Australia – like there was an Australia Day holiday in there, and I'm like – because I remember saying to Lance, I didn't even care if any of the family couldn't come. I'm just like, I just want to get this done. And I don't care that nobody can come. I don't care what – I just want to get this done. And then that stupid public holiday was in the middle of it, which gave me a little bit of space to sit with what to do. Because obviously I didn't know what Benny would want. He's 20. He had no will. He had no religion preference. We'd not talked about funerals versus burial versus cremation. He was 20 years old. I had no idea what to do for our boy. That weighs on you because you're just like, it's the last thing I'm going to get to do for him.
Yep.
And you want it to be lovely, you know. So I remember that stupid public weekend gave me a little bit of time to just pause, remember what a beautiful soul he was, and that he was also a young man of few words. So I knew that his funeral and celebration of his life was going to be quiet because he was a quiet. He was the opposite of Hannah. And funnily enough, things started coming back to me in regard to how we might plan this funeral, you know. And I always say to you, and a similar moment happened to us today, and these things happen all the time, if you pay attention to what's going on, it's all important. Even the stuff you think that's inconsequential, it's all important. So Ben and I were in Costco one time, and Costco confused Ben. So Ben, for those of you who don't know Ben had Asperger's. So he was very much on the spectrum, and Costco makes no sense to anybody on the spectrum because it actually is food and clothing and optical and household goods and gardening and tyres and coffins. So we were at North Lakes Costco, and this came to me in those quiet days prior to planning his service. We were at North Lakes Costco, and they had right near the tyre section a little wall, a display
I know
of
the ones you're talking about.
coffin ends, the ends of coffins, and then handles and all sorts of stuff. And Ben turned to me and he goes, Mum, they sell baby coffins here. And I'm like, dude, they're not baby coffins. That's just so you can like choose what kind of wood grain you like or handles or whatever. So then, because Ben being Ben, he goes, well, which one do you like? And I'm like, I like that white one. And we're looking at handles and I go, what about you? Which one would you choose? And he goes, oh, I like this one. And it was like a walnutty kind of, dark ones. And this one was like a walnutty one. And he's looking at handles and he goes, oh, and I like those brass handles. So this is like this this was, mind you, years before.
Yeah. But a very normal Ben conversation.
A very normal Ben conversation.
Yeah. Like we're laughing and people are going to listening are going to be going, how are you laughing at this? But
it was. So I recalled and I'm like, actually, you do know what kind of coffin Benny would like. And you do know because you had that conversation. And then again, only a couple of months prior to Benny passing away, Lance was going through his clothes. And my husband keeps clothes from 1986. Like, he has got more clothes than it's unbelievable. And I'm like, hon, you're never going to wear them anymore. Why do you still? But anyway, he loves them. A couple of months beforehand, I said, this is ridiculous. We've got to start going through some of these clothes. So we're looking at some nice shirts, the pants he wore when we got married, blah, blah, blah. And we're going through it. And he goes, do you think Benny would like these? They'd probably fit him now. Benny was 6'2". I go, well, let's ask him. And so he brings Benny in and they're looking at all these clothes and Ben's like, oh, yeah. And he goes into his room and he tries them on like a teenage girl.
Yep.
Comes
Fashion
out.
Parade.
Fashion parade. Wearing the navy blue wedding pants that Lance got married in, a lovely shirt that he picked that he thought might go well, and then a few other things. He came back out and we're like, they look great, mate. And Lance is like, they're all yours if you want them, dude. Like, they look fantastic. So when it came to picking what we were going to bury him in, of course, he was wearing the outfit that he picked that Lance had literally just said to him, mate, and his granddad hat.
His granddad hat.
But it was those kind of funny, not funny but funny things that happen that obviously months before we didn't know that, 2 years ago in Costco, I didn't know I was going to need to retain that information. Months before, Lance didn't know because I would not have known what to put Ben in. Ben was because of his autism, he took on persona, he could go from being Gentleman Jack to a cowboy to whatever music he was listening to at the moment. His fashion sense would change depending on the day, really. So I wouldn't have had a clue what to do, and it would have weighed heavy on me. But it was just so poignant that had literally happened months before, and it was an easy decision to make. And he looked so handsome.
I think about in those days after Hen and Benny and the amount of decisions you have to make.
And on that, the decisions you have to make when you go to the funeral home, they are on the day. You get one visit pretty much and they give you book. It's on, no joke. It's like if a bridal, you go to a wedding and they present you with magazines for floral arrangements, and it is the same, but it's for a funeral. And you are making all of those decisions, and they are usually made within a week of your loved one passing away. When you are at your most unable to make a decision moment of your brain's not working, and you're expected, unlike at a wedding when you've been planning this, you're making all these decisions and it's just bang, 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 bang.
And there's no break in it. Like I remember you calling me saying, I've got to have these photos but they have to be on this drive and they've got to be uploaded and they've got to be in a special format. And I'm like, my answer to that was, what the fuck?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
why is somebody
Yeah.
telling you this
Yes.
is what you need to do this week?
And it's all got to be, can't be longer than a minute and a half, and it can't be this and it can't be that. And you're like, oh, this is so much. This is so much.
And it sounds stupid, but when you are pushed to your maximum level of capacity to survive, someone saying to you, I'd like 20 photos in this format, or can you have a song but it can only go for this long?
Yeah.
Or like they seem like silly little things that
And
in
the
your
thing
everyday
is-
life wouldn't be a big thing.
Yeah.
But in those moments, they can be soul crushing.
They are. And I think the thing to remember, and I would put this out to all celebrants and people that are officiating funerals or having anything to do with this, you do it every day. So it becomes very matter of fact for you.
Yeah.
And I do understand that. That's your job and you do it regularly. So, you know, they know how to streamline it. They know how it's all got to run. But this is the first, well, mostly, it wasn't my first time. It wasn't my first rodeo, but it quite often is.
Yeah.
And you're presenting these people with all of this information that you do regularly. You know, you're having this conversation with a family every day, every other day.
Being there when you called the funeral people and you said, oh, hi, my name's Racheal and
this was White Ladies in Toronto. We love you.
we joked afterwards.
We're never going to call again, eh?
You won't remember me from such funerals as.
I said no. What I said was, hi, it's Racheal Rye. We've used your services before. Our son Christian was buried in 1996 and we used your services. And then for Hannah, oh, yes, we remember Hannah.
Yeah.
Well, I said, now sadly we need you again. That poor woman, I crushed her. She was crying and I got off that phone thinking, well, that was a bit unprofessional. But
we were all sitting around the table. There was a few of us, there were another couple of your friends that had arrived from overseas and we're listening to this and people are going to think we're weird, but like we're giggling in the background, right?
Yeah. And you know why you giggle? Because it is so unfathomable that I would be ringing White Ladies in Toronto 3 times to bury my children.
Yeah.
It would not be unfathomable to think that a grandparent had passed away, and of course I'll call White Ladies because
I've used them before.
Yeah. But to call them, and that's all I could think of at the time was to say I've used your services before. You helped me with my son Christian and then Hannah, and sadly I need your services again. That's what I said. And I think that's why we laugh, because it's a very fine line between laughing and crying.
Yeah. It's
the same response, I think.
I think so.
The same response. It just depends on
the person.
And it's why people laugh at funerals, some people sob, you know, and it's why some days I can just find something so funny and thinking about Benny, and I'll just laugh and laugh. And other days I will be sobbing because it's the same emotion. It just is coming out however it's coming out. Yeah. And I think that's the key. It's got to come out. It doesn't matter how it comes out. It's just got to come out.
If someone is listening to this, what do you want them to know about surviving the things that are unsurvivable?
I don't think anything's unsurvivable. If we're living, we're all going to be faced with unthinkable and unimaginable circumstances, whether it's the death of children, the end of a marriage, the loss of a job. So many things affect everybody to different levels. You can't live and not expect to be thrown into the deep end at some point. You also can't live, like I said before, if you live, you die, you grieve. If you're still alive, you're going to grieve something in your life. And I think the biggest thing for me is something I think we've lost touch of as people is to trust your gut. I don't care what people, if they think I'm handling things well, if I'm handling things the way they should be. When Hannah died, I moved to Noosa. You know, did people think that was odd? Yes. Did I care? No. I have managed these situations with honesty, trusting my own gut the entire time. That is what I would say to anybody listening. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter if it doesn't conform. It doesn't matter if you think you're crazy. Trust your gut. Follow your gut, because that is the truth. It's always the truth.
So we're going to continue this conversation again next week. You've learnt a lot about Racheal's story today, but we've only scratched the surface of the wisdom that this woman has to offer. So as we close this part of our conversation, I'm still returning to Racheal's words. I bend, I don't break. And I want her to share more about that philosophy with us, because bending can seem graceful, and there is this romantic, beautiful idea around survival. But sometimes resilience is simply the quiet decision to keep breathing inside a reality that you never asked for. Today's conversation asked us to sit beside grief in its rawest form, not to solve it, not to explain it, but simply witness it. And in Racheal's honesty, there's something deeply human, the reminder that even when life changes us forever, love does not disappear. Neither does the possibility of continuing. Next week, we will continue this conversation in a very different way. We move beyond grief itself and into the places it inhabits, into our homes, our memories, our landscapes, and the strange way loss can settle itself into the physical spaces around us. We explore what it means to find home again when home itself looks like both comfort and heartbreak. Until then, hold close the people you love. Be gentle with yourselves and with each other. And if this conversation stirred something within you, know that you are not alone in it.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If These Trees Could Talk and What Would They Say are productions of Bellevue Studio. Our host is Shannon Walters, executive and audio production by Megan Anderson, with socials and marketing managed by Mia Oberdorf. We always appreciate hearing your thoughts, so if you would like to support the show, you can rate, review and subscribe. To stay up to date between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. For more information on this episode or to connect with our guests, you'll find everything you need to know in the show notes at ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. We're grateful to have you with us, and we look forward to sharing what comes next. Thanks for being here.